I feel like people oftentimes are going to miss the love that's right in front of them because it doesn't look and feel exactly like their expectations, how they've dreamed it. They're frustrated and they feel forgotten. They feel forgotten by the church. They feel frustrated with the apps.
What are signs of incompatibility?
Stop apologizing for the desire to be married. It's okay that it hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. But my life is now. So in a place of not waiting, but preparing.
What's the number one problem you see singles making when it comes to their evaluation process? Welcome back to the Dear Future Husband podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm so glad that you're here today. First, I'm so glad that there is a generation of people in the single and dating camps that are like, hey, I know that the intention is marriage and I want to do this well. So I thought it would be really encouraging for us, practical and beneficial, to have a conversation of how do we even navigate dating well to get to that happily ever after that is ongoing. So I brought on a new friend, Jackie, to have this conversation. And you are a matchmaker, you are an author, you are in this world and living it out with people. So can you just give the audience a little glimpse into what your life looks like in this realm?
Oh, wow. So my life looks like waking up in the morning and getting to have my own Hallmark channel. I get to live in other people's romances all day long. And, you know, they can get a little crazy, a little roller coaster ride sometimes. But just really getting to play a part, playing any kind of matchmaking part, but also coaching part, also helping people get out of their own way, out of God's way part is just so rewarding. And then when I get pictures of, I have a box full of wedding invitations. Okay. I don't go to all of them. I used to try, but no longer because of the numbers. But when I get those in the mail or I get the pictures on Instagram, I get tagged in them, or someone announces like a pregnancy announcement of one of our couples. I'm like, hey, I'm part of this story. And so every day I'm living and breathing other people's love stories.
That's so cool. Now I have to throw this number out here because your guys are probably like, okay, fine. Did you matchmake like one or two friends? They have matchmaked 1,600 people. Now, don't get anxious. Don't be like, okay, how do I sign up? Let's continue hearing the full episode and then we'll link to all the links. But I think that's amazing. And I actually think it's really beneficial. We were chatting about this, how crazy the dating culture is today. Yes. To feel like whether it's a friend, a family member, there's just someone sure to help you introduce to somebody, but also help you process. So, because it can be crazy or feel like a dumpster fire.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you experience with the people that come to you? Like, how do you see a practical and beneficial way to help people with this dating climate?
I think that the theme that I see when people come to me is that they're frustrated and they feel forgotten. They feel forgotten by the church. They feel frustrated with the apps. They don't want to do the technology. And so we have coined the phrase community-based matchmaking. And so that is where our hearts are. Okay. We believe that that's the model. The Ancient of Days has ancient ways. And part of his ancient ways, that good path is community. You know, it used to be that people would meet in community at your high school, at your civic center, at, some after school group, your brother's best friend, whatever. Somehow between community and family, we got match made. That guy's making eyes over the black-eyed peas and your grandma's like, hey, baby, let me talk to his mama for you. That's the way it used to be.
From good breeding.
Exactly. But it isn't that way anymore because we've lost touch with community. And so building community has been our heart first and foremost, because we don't want it to feel like it's all about who can I marry? Who's here? Because I feel like when we are just looking at other people, the opposite sex, as a possible spouse, we lose the beauty of, the divine masculine and feminine. Like we're all different, a mosaic of God in his heart. And it's important for us to see each other that way. And so we've built this community in which 1,600 people have gotten married in the last 4.5 years. And I have matched some of them. I've always loved to be a matchmaker. I helped 15 of my friends get married before I started doing Last Year Single.
Okay.
And so the theme is we feel frustrated. We feel forgotten. We feel like nobody cares about us. And so the number one thank you note that I get is, thank you for caring about us. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tear up. Thank you for seeing us and not forgetting about us. So that's the number one thing.
I love that. And I sense your heart is like, okay, the goal is not just get married and put the ring on the finger, but it is I have this desire.
Yeah.
And I want to live it out well, the right way with the right person.
Right.
And I think that's what we're all here. Hopefully, if you're part of this channel, that's what our goal is too, is like, how do we bring this desire to God and trust him with it, which can be scary. And I'm sure that's why people feel forgotten, because they're like, what do I do with this longing? I want to ask a question. This is something I believe, and hopefully you do too, is there's matchmaking, because not everyone is a match. Like, you can't just go to the opposite sex or like the guy down the street every time and just be like, we're going to make it work because I want to be married. But there is some divine within it. There is, you know, a God story. So what are your thoughts on that when you are seeing how people interact or helping them not to rush or to feel that FOMO in dating?
The very first thing that I like to do with people when they come into the Last Year Single program is help them to stop apologizing for the desire to be married. I think a lot of times other people tell them that they shouldn't want it simply because it hasn't happened yet. And so they either get, you know, completely focused on it and anxious about it, and it's all they can think about, and it's destroying the rest of their life because they don't realize that their life is now.
Yeah.
Or they've just put it in a box somewhere, like, you know, a Pandora's box. Like, I'm not allowed to open this because I shouldn't want this. Because if God wanted it for me, then it would have already happened. And that's not true. I love to take people into a place where we are holding in the tension of, I can have this, and it's also has not happened yet. Like, you know, I want it, and it's okay that it hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. But my life is now. So in a place of not waiting, but preparing. And what you said is right. There's soulmates and there's spirit mates. And this is how I differentiate between the two. A soulmate is someone that, you know, you like them, you're attracted to them, they're funny, you have some things in common, you have some infatuation, some chemistry. That's awesome. But do you have the longevity to build a life together, to build a lineage, a legacy together? Because you have to be able to go from soulmate to spirit mate.
Yeah.
Do you have that other thing, that it factor in common? And I know that no one understands this until it happens to them, but we help people do the heart work, which is our protocol, our modality of healing and really being able to focus on what's important in your life. What are your non-negotiables that are from heaven, not from your bad past experiences, right? So when we get people in that space, then when it comes to a spirit mate, when you know, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And relationship anxiety often gets in the way of that, right? Our head is screaming, but our heart's at peace. We have all these crazy thoughts, you know, intrusive and obsessive thoughts about what if this isn't the one? What if this is what God wants? So we help people unpack that so that they can be clear to feel that, you know, synergy of that spirit mate type of match.
Yeah.
Got to get that stuff out of the way.
Exactly. And then you can trust it too. Because I think the number one thing when people are like, well, I don't know when I know you know. Well, it's like you have to have this knowing within you that's not just about the person, but it's like, I know who I am. I know what I believe.
Exactly.
Your nose feeds your nose. And
the work that you do beforehand is what allows you to know when you know. You got to do this in order to have that.
So that preparation period, that's when people are still single. That's what you want them walking through.
Yes.
Okay.
And even after they get together, I mean, I can't tell you how many people, men and women, because we have female and male clients, students as well, that we talk down off the ledge of, you know, some kind of crazy idea that, you know, God said no. You know, and it usually isn't. I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's just them being really afraid. It isn't like God saying no. I think if people think that God says no a whole lot more than he says yes to just everything in life. To everything in life. God's like, no, no, no. And I'm like, well, let's unpack that. Why do you think he's saying no? And then normally it's a whole list of them not really giving themselves permission to go to the next level in life.
Yeah. I experienced that, and I shared this recently with our community during engagement, where it was like, oh, yes, I'm following God's yes. And I was like, wait a minute. This is too good. Like, what if I mess it up? So maybe it's a no. And my husband's like, will you stop? And I was like, well, my fiance. And I was like, okay, you're right. Sorry. It's just me.
Yeah.
He did that soul work and that preparation, so he knew. But
love that.
I wanted to ask, what are signs of compatibility? But what you just said, I actually want to ask instead, what are signs of incompatibility? Like, what are those, hey, you're forcing it, or you don't truly know?
I think that a lot of times people run into thinking that you're incompatible just because you don't want the exact same things in life at this moment in your life. And, you know, it's truly okay to have non-negotiables from heaven. Like, you've done the work and you know, I have to have this in a marriage relationship, whatever those things are. But that should be a short list. Everything else should kind of be up for, just collaboration with that person, right? Because if this is too locked down of all the things that, it has to look like this, it has to feel like this, I feel like people oftentimes they're going to miss the love that's right in front of them because it doesn't look and feel exactly like their expectations, how they've dreamed it. Oh, I had a dream, and I had one client who thought that she knew the first name of her husband because of some dream that she had. And this happens, of course, in the spiritual and Christian space more than any other space, of course, right? And she wouldn't date anyone if they didn't have that first name. And then finally, a person showed up at their church that had this first name, and she was like,
common,
and he's cute,
or like crazy?
No, it's not a common name. No, It wasn't a common name. And I'm not going to say the name because then she'll be like, talking about me. But so a person showed up at the church and got involved with the church that had this first name. And she's like, oh, finally. Like she hadn't been dating for years and years, just waiting. Like I think it was like 6 years, not dating, not meeting anyone, because she was just waiting for this first name to show up. And then he ended up marrying her roommate. They actually went on a date, but then they never had a second date, and he ended up dating her roommate and marrying her roommate. And I was
She was like too close to that girl. She had a dream for her.
Something. But the thing is that, people can get stuck. And so my job is to help them get unstuck. But I think that signs of incompatibility, to answer your question, is that you don't understand each other. There's a lack of peace in the relationship. There's chemistry. There's that soul kind of desire for each other. But, you find yourself kind of missing on all cylinders. You're not communicating well. You don't feel safe in that person's presence or around them. You don't feel like you can be yourself. You always feel like you're striving or competing or, trying to get their attention or their affection. Those are definitely signs that is not a spirit-mate relationship.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot. We see a lot of people with what they call opposite attachment styles.
Yeah, I've heard about that. You want to unpack that a little bit for people? So
let's say an anxious attacher, someone who wants certainty very quickly, and they have no problem, making a very strong and very quick emotional connection. We'll just paint it nicely because sometimes it can be really, like you said, a dumpster fire. But then oftentimes those people will be trying to get the affection and attention of someone who has an avoidant style. And this person at first will be all into that. Okay, likes the attention, the affection, but pretty soon they will start pulling away. And the more they pull away, this person will try to grab a hold, right? And so there's a push and pull situation that gets created by that. And it can be really heartbreaking, especially for this person, the anxious attacher. Because every time they think that, okay, I finally have to let this person go, there'll be a little bit of hope that's given. I think people call it breadcrumbing, right? A little bit of hope that's given, and then they'll be like, so if you're in this kind of push and pull situation, you need to know that you deserve the whole cake, not just the crumbs of the cake. You deserve the whole cake. So we see that a lot. And so helping someone to rewire their nervous system, because that's what's happening here, helping them to understand why they anxiously attach or avoidantly attach or disordered attach, helping them understand that so that when they go into a relationship, they can do things differently.
I mean, we could just go on a rabbit hole. So I'm going to reel myself back in here, response to that. But I think that's so good. And especially for the women watching, I would say realize that quicker, because I think we will try to fix the bad guy or like try to win his attention, or it's the guy that everyone wants to date and he started to notice you. And so at least in my background, that's what I would see. And so I think if we get really keen on like how God sees us and how he views marriage, because I know for myself, shame was a big thing in that engagement season where I was like, oh, God has brought so much of his promise forth, but I don't feel deserving. And granted, I wasn't, because I didn't do anything to earn it, but his view of marriage was of an honoring relationship and loving. And so I had to jump that hurdle of, okay, it's not because I've earned this, but I am going to live out a marriage that's God honoring if I'm going to get married. And so I think if we can just have those convictions stronger earlier, and I'm sure this is what you're talking about within the preparation of like, what do I believe? What do I want for myself? But so signs of incompatibility, what are signs of compatibility where I feel like it's a little hard when we're dating to be like, okay, is this the one, when there are so many options? But then there's also the really picky daters where you're saying like the person's like, I'm waiting for this needle in a haystack type relationship. So what's the difference of holding true to your values and for something really amazing and not just picking the first person, and also not getting stuck and not being too picky?
Yeah, holding the tension between those two things is hard. But one thing that people need to understand is that everybody has yellow flags. Everybody has them. You have them. Even right now, sitting here, we're both married, but we both have yellow flags. Our husbands have yellow flags. All those things are things in areas where people are still in process. Okay, this model, this Christian discipleship model is a progressive model. We're constantly evolving and changing and growing and stretching, right? And so you're going to meet someone possibly when they're really working on something in their life. And if you allow that to be a deal breaker, because you're waiting for someone who's completely evolved and you're going to be waiting until Jesus comes back. I always tell people, hey, look, if you want to marry Jesus, then we'll ping you. We'll ping your phone when he gets here. But you're going to marry an imperfect man who's still in progress. And gentlemen, if you're listening, you're going to marry an imperfect woman. Because
that's marriage.
It is. We have people out here rejecting men on hairlines and men rejecting women on waistlines and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. It's like, look, you're getting picky because you're afraid, first of all. And second of all, you have these unrealistic expectations of what relationship looks like. So what takes a yellow flag and makes it green is that person understands that they need to be working on this, and they are, right? They have accountability, they have mentorship, they have those things in that area. And what makes it red is that they're not aware of it, or they don't want to be self-aware of it, and they're not working on it. And so that's where if you see something, because you're going to see something, if you hang out with someone long enough, you're going to see something you don't like. And if you're brave enough to address it, because what a lot of women will do, this is what I see women doing, they'll ignore it because they don't want to rock the boat, because
their own or the other person's?
The other person's.
Okay.
They won't, especially if they're an anxious dater, they won't say anything about it because they don't want to rock the boat because, they have all these other qualities, or they'll start, telling themselves, this is okay, I'm not going to worry about this. Or they don't want to bring something up because they're afraid that they won't like the answer, and that will cause them to be forced to come out of the relationship, because all they really want is a relationship. All they really want is to be married. But that's not a good way to go about that, because if someone's really not working on that, then that's going to get worse in marriage, right? And so that needs to be a deal breaker. It needs to be a deal breaker if you do bring it up, if you do address it. Of course, not in an early relationship, because you're probably not going to see it yet. But when you do address it, their answer is what's most important. If they're like, yeah, I know, I'm working on that, and this is how I'm working on that. That's what's important. Because we want, for ladies that are listening, we want mature, masculine, and marriage-minded men. Yeah. The 3 M's.
Amen.
We got to have it. And so if they are not those things, then you're not going to make them those things just by being with them for a longer period of time or giving them more and more chances. They're either that or they're not. Okay? They're either that or they're not. So especially, I have a lot of clients in their 30s and 40s, and it's like, it's okay to not know who you are. But if you've gotten to these decades and you still don't know any direction in which you're going, it's probably not a man who's ready to be married.
He's not a boy. You're not his mama.
That's right.
You can't. Yeah.
Girlfriends are for high school. Perpetual girlfriends. Yeah.
So I want to address something here, because I'm sure some people are thinking, okay, I might be an anxious attacher. Like, I don't want to attach to the wrong style. But then there's also the essence of opposites may attract. How can we know if we are just different-minded in a great way, or if we are maybe approaching some of those dynamics where I'm chasing someone that wants to be chased, I am anxious a little bit? What's the difference there, a little practically?
I love complementary opposites. I think that, do you go together? It's okay to be opposite. Polar opposite is harder. I've seen people have successful marriages that are polar opposite, meaning that you don't think alike at all. Okay. Besides being the difference of being male and female, they don't think alike at all. And they have to kind of work it like a job, because polar opposites attract. They definitely do, but they don't cohabitate well. And so that's going to be a harder match. It's possible, but it's going to be harder. Complementary opposites are where you have a lot of the main things in common. You just execute differently. Besides just being male and female, you actually execute differently as well. Right. And so I like complementary opposites. So don't be afraid of someone who thinks differently than you by like approaching the same problem, but they're going to solve it differently. I think that's a fun relationship. And I think those are the most, honestly, I call it like West Coast swing relationships, where both people are kind of coming and collaborating with their creativity. And even though it's different when it's together, like it's like peanut butter and jelly, it's delicious. You wouldn't have thought that those two things would go together, but they do because they're complementary. They're not opposite. Opposite would be like peanut butter and pickles.
Yeah.
Some people like that.
But only like when you're pregnant, right?
Okay, yeah,
There's really special occasions when that works. Yeah.
So it's like, cool. So look for someone who, not look for them, but when you are meeting people, don't be afraid of people who are a little different than you, as long as they're not contrarian to you. I think that's the most important thing. If every time you try to talk to them about something, they don't understand what you're saying, and it takes forever to get your, viewpoint across because they just think so polar opposite of you, that's going to be a hard relationship. It is.
So a practical example for women that are listening. So I'll use my husband and I as guinea pigs. We come from very different backgrounds. Like he's raised by 2 Italians. I'm raised by 2 Southerners. And it's just, like a whole world of background difference, which happens for literally everyone.
Yeah.
I know you and your husband grew up as neighbors, so y'all might be a little bit more like-minded than we are. But how I would handle a situation is very different than him. But we both have the view of faith. We both have the view of loving and honoring people. So where he might be like, oh, justice, and like, we're going to go have a conversation with them right now. I'm like, what if we bake them cookies and then just maybe try to tiptoe around it? But that's helped us bridge a good gap together. Yeah. And so that's what I'm hearing you say, like, are your hearts aligned in the things that matter so that your differences can play well together?
Exactly.
Or are you just like on 2 different playgrounds where your goals are completely different?
Yeah. And usually complementary opposites, they really, even though they're not alike in the way they execute, they really respect the other person's execution. They're not like, no, there's only one right way to do things and it's not that way, right? They really are like, wow, I wouldn't have done it that way, but that's cool. That's good. And so they really they respect each other's differences to the place where they can honor those differences, and together it can be a beautiful collaboration.
You said the word respect, and just like ping went off. We've heard that men need respect as their number one, and women need love.
Yeah.
So how do you encourage people that are dating if they're in a style like where there's some guys that are the golden retrievers, where it's like, oh yeah, I want to be respected, but I'm still like happy-go-lucky. And then there's other men that are like more head honchos, and it's like, I need respect, I need it communicated. And then the same for women with love. How do you encourage people to share like the love languages, or to express who they are and how they feel within the dating realm, where they don't over-attach, but they're learning, okay, do our love languages complement? Do we have that type of consistency?
Yeah.
Stickiness?
We have a really great kind of premarital course, and people come into it, when they've been dating for just a few months, sometimes not even when they're engaged, because they want to see, are we compatible? That's the number one question. Like, are we compatible long term? I'm so worried, And so I think that just really being able to communicate, that's one of the facets of what we do. The first thing you have to do is be able to communicate, what does respect mean to you?
Yeah.
Because it means something to everybody. And so like you said, there are different types of men, there are different types of women. We can't just say respect means submission or doing what, like letting me lead, letting me make all the big decisions. Respect to a different man might mean something different. So as a couple, you need to communicate and say, okay, what does respect mean to you? What does it look like for you to be respected in a relationship? Yeah. What does it look like for you to be loved in a relationship, to have the attention that you need, to have the, devotion that you want? What does it look like? And if you can't communicate that, then that's when you have to spend some time with yourself, just saying, what does that look like? How do I feel loved? What really makes me feel seen and known? And if you don't know the answer, then you can't expect that person to know the answer. Right? You can't expect that person to give you something that you are not asking for. And so
kind of save your complex zone if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I just want someone that knows me fearfully and wonderfully. It's like, oh, if you don't, they won't.
Yeah. And it also is part of the rom-com thing too. Like, women historically have been accused of expecting men to read our minds, right? Historically.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a mind reader, and they're not. And that's one thing that I really want to say to ladies out there. When you're saying, I want him to initiate, well, you better tell him how, because he doesn't know what you want. They're not we don't just expect men to do all these things. And I really kind of push back because I wasn't raised in the church. I didn't meet Jesus until I was in my 20s. Okay. So I'd had a long history of dating already before I got married at 20 years old. I got married before I knew Jesus. And so then a few years later, that's when I had my conversion experience. And so I look at Christian dating, I'm like, y'all are weird. This is not the way this is supposed to work, because I think a lot of times people get the cart before the horse when it comes to this. Instead of just, enjoying the process of getting to know another human being without having to have certainty, without having to, put all the blanks in. It doesn't have to be romantic. We have a saying at Last Year Single, it's a yes until it's a no. So rushing into the romantic context of getting to know someone is something that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
You should be okay with being with other humans and really seeing if you enjoy them just as people before you try to figure out whether or not this person is a life partner.
Right.
Just enjoy people.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And then you know them better, so you can feel better about your full yes when you give it. I want to ask, with your conversations with people, what's the number one problem you see singles making when it comes to their evaluation process? When it's like 1 to 2, 3 dates in and they're like, I don't know if I want to say yes because I don't want to lose this chance, or I really know how to even trust myself with this.
Once again, I don't think that you need to know. In a few dates in, I don't really know how you would know unless you were in community with this person and you've been like, we have these levels of knowing people, so we kind of put it in levels so people can kind of understand. And so like you and I, we're friends now, we're meeting, we're on a podcast. So you and I are at a level 1 of just being in community with each other. We have mutual friends, we're around each other. But we wouldn't get to level 2 unless we started hanging out.
Yeah.
Like, go to lunch, go shopping, do something. And then that doesn't mean we're besties. That just means that, hey, we liked each other enough to get to know each other better. And so I think that people need to understand that it's okay to have relationships at level 2. And if you're not in community with someone, it's going to be really hard for you to get to level 3 within 3 meetings. And level 3 is where I know exclusively want to focus on you for a romantic relationship. For hopefully marriage-minded relationship. It'd be hard for us to jump to level 3 unless we had spent a great deal of time at level 2 or we have been at level 1 for a long time. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we're meeting strangers on the internet, all right? Yeah. And then we're expecting to know in 1 or 2 dates. That's where it's a yes until it's a no came from. Because it's like, hey, if you enjoy hanging out with them and, you're having fun and they're having fun and you just, you really just like them, it's okay to just continue to say yes to getting to know them. It's okay. And you don't have to lock yourself down and just be like, oh, I can only get to know this person, because it's not romantic. Okay, you're not. And this is where when you have these attachment styles that force a romantic connection, I can't wait to see you again. I miss you so much. I can't stop thinking about you. Okay, then you went to level 3. No one told you to, but you did. You did.
Yeah.
And now there's no coming back to level 2 because you went there.
Yeah.
You held hands, you had long, long hugs. Okay, that's it. You're no longer over here. Now you're over here.
Jumped. Yeah.
And so a lot of people, because they really want the certainty of the romance, they really jump the gun.
Right.
They jump over here in the deep end of the pool when they belong over here in the shallow end.
Do you encourage communications of like, okay, we're making this next step? Because that's the thing that my husband did that blew me away. He's like, hey, I date with the intention to marry. This is what, this is where we're going. And I was like, you just gave me like a roadmap. And I so appreciate that. Usually I'm like, okay, if you kiss me, that means you like me.
Yeah.
Do you encourage communication?
I mean, we do. We encourage men to be mature and to really be leaders.
Yeah.
In this whole process. This is an opportunity for you to see how much a man is going to lead. But a lot of men weren't taught that. They weren't taught to do this. And as far as like in the getting to know you stages of relationship. They weren't taught to lead. They weren't taught to initiate. And women will use that word a lot with me. They're like, oh, I just want to be pursued, right? That's the word. And it's like, well, are you running away? Because pursuit actually means to be chased. And I think a lot of women really mean that when they say the word pursuit. They mean, I want to be chased. I want to feel desirable. I want to, I want him to do all the heavy lifting. And that's not a teammate. That's not a partner. And so I believe modern love story is a partnership. We don't live in the bygone days. Some people are looking for that type of relationship. And I feel like there are people in that market. And so that needs to be on your non-negotiable list. I want to stay home. I want to raise babies. I want to be a homesteader. I want to bake sourdough. I want the man to be out traditionally providing. That does happen. We see a lot of matches like that, but that needs to be communicated at the beginning. There are a lot of women that have gone to college during their single season. They have degrees, they have careers, and they want more of a modern partnership where they're both going to be taking care of the house and the kids, where they're both going to be doing that stuff equally, right? And so it's important that we understand that when we say pursuit, that first of all, it's going to mean something different to everyone. And I think you kind of tell the man how to treat you. How do you want him to lead you? It's like that old joke. I want to be led, but only when I feel like being led, and only how I want to be led, how I like to be led, right?
Yeah.
And so your husband obviously had good raising and he was intentional, probably had been told a lot of things about this area of his life. Yeah. Some people are told nothing. In fact, some people are told, don't have this area of your life.
Yeah.
Kiss dating
more
goodbye,
and more.
Right? No dating. Dating is only for mating. And so that puts a lot of pressure on, I have to be certain about this person before I even start taking them on dates. I have to be certain that I want to take them all the way to a marriage situation. And
right.
That's a lot of pressure.
Are you I've been more fascinated the more I looked into like the dating culture and how it arose, because like you were alluding to earlier, it was never dating. It was friendship and courtship and family gatherings. And then, we're going to go to level 2 or 3 because we already know. So I think I want to say that to encourage people that are like, I just feel like there's so many rules and then like so many regulations to those rules. But what my best and probably my only like dating advice across the board is like, well, just fall in love with Jesus and know yourself. And then things just get more clear because you have this inner peace, this inner knowing that transpires everything of like, you have to get it right. You're going to get so much of it wrong. And on the idea of pursuit, there was a lot that I was like, oh, I'm so glad your mom raised you that way. And I'm reaping the rewards of her sowing. But then there was also things where he would get it wrong, but I would see through his character, hey, he might not know exactly how to do this because he was raised with all boys and doesn't exactly know how women think.
Right.
But I see that he cares. And I see that he's intentional about wanting to be a great man. And so I think with pursuit, just piggybacking off of that is like, he may not know how to lead you perfectly yet, but if he's willing to show up, if he's willing to lead, like that is a type of pursuit. How he leads and lives his life is a way of leadership.
Totally. And you obviously were willing to ask for what you needed.
Yeah, because I did dating wrong for a long time. So I was just like, God, we're not going through that mess again. I'm just going to be really clear. But my husband even said, he's like, hey, the way that you asked hard questions gave me the clarity to keep moving forward with you when other times it was no. So I was like, well, thank goodness, because I thought I was just burnt out and pushy, but I just knew it wasn't worth wasting our time. No. And I didn't want to anxious attach or have the FOMO seasons. It's just not worth it.
And that's really good that you recognized that what you were doing in the past wasn't working and it wasn't getting you to where you want it to be, and that you were willing to change it. Because what I see people doing is lather, rinse, repeat, the same cycles over and over again. So we help people do their heart work to find out where those cycles rooted, because we're never stuck on the outside. We're always stuck on the inside, 1,000% of the time. And so when people are willing to do that deeper work, not just inner healing, not just therapy, but specifically heart work in the area of relationships, when they're willing to do that, then they start to see, oh, this is why I do this. This is why I do that. What we believe we become, and what we become we attract. And so we're always going to be attracting the same type of person for a relationship until we disengage from these lies that we're believing.
Yeah.
It's important.
What do you think is the number one contributing factor for getting out of those cycles? And again, I think we think of cycles of just you're dating the toxic guys, but I think it also could be being overly picky, pushing people away.
Totally.
Like there's so many just bad tendencies we pick up. Mine, I think, was accountability. Because I had the bad dating and it was easy to be like, oh, well, he wasn't the one or it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
It was so easy for me to blame, well, that just wasn't the right guy. It wasn't the right timing. It's not my season. But once I realized, hey, I'm the one making these decisions.
Right.
I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting other people. I'm probably hurting God's heart by not trusting him in some way. That was an eye-opener to me. And I finally got more serious and stop playing around or pushing blame. And so for me, accountability became a big turning point. I don't know if there's things that you've seen with your clients, your friends, that it's like, oh, that's gold.
Yeah, it is. Accountability is gold. When you start, admitting that you're the common denominator, so it can't be all these things, right? Because trauma doesn't just hurt us, it creates different versions of us. And one of the versions it creates is victim. And so it's, there's no good guys. I hear that all the time. Yeah. There's none left, just like toilet paper during COVID. They're all gone, right? And it's like, you only need one.
Yeah.
You just need one. And I promise you there's one left, right? And so, but they tell themselves that. And I've seen so many amazing transformations of women that believe the deepest lies about their situation, that men weren't good, that men only wanted one thing. And you can guess what that is. Well, and that's what I say to them. I say, they at least want two things because they want food. I say that all the time, right? And so, but them really coming into understanding that, that they were hurt by something or someone, and now that has carried over into this lack of accountability. That yes, you're choosing men that only want this one thing. You're choosing people that treat you this way, but why? Let's dig deeper and find out. So accountability is huge. So once people are willing to look in the mirror and say, this is my pattern and I'm the common denominator of it. And so it doesn't matter that all these other things are true. This is also true. And I need to get to the bottom of it. We call that hard work.
Yeah. And it's not fun. It's not easy, but it's transformative. It's
hard work.
I love that you said that so many women have had that experience. And I'm hopeful that's going to be more and more the norm. So we can have amazing marriages, but also just incredible people that are single and just where they are, they're thriving.
You know what women get mad though about? They get mad. They're like, okay, we're going to do this, Jackie, but what are the boys doing? What are the men doing? And I just want the women out there to know that men are doing their heart work. I've never seen anything like it.
Really?
When my book, The Heart Work, came out in 2019, I thought it was just for women. And then I had a good friend of mine tell me that, hey, this is for men too. He's a guy. And he was like, hey, this book's for men too, because he read it. And I was like, okay. So I put on my Facebook in 2020, I put out on my Facebook page, I helped that there was a captive audience because we were all locked down. But I said, do any guys out there want to do heart work? 200 guys showed up in 24 hours.
Wow.
And now we have a group for men that's over 1,000 men. So don't tell me that men don't want to do heart work.
Do you want to link up our...
Yes, I do. Don't tell me they don't want to do heart work, because they do. They just didn't know that it was available and they just didn't know how to do it. But if someone invites them into it, they want it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned traumahood. That doesn't only affect one gender.
No.
And I think there was a lot of just crazy, I mean, we're in a guinea pig season now, but also 50 years ago, 20 years ago, like there's things we're all healing from. So
totally.
I love men. Thank you. There's been guys that come to the channel and they're like, do you have this for men too? I'm like, no, but you're welcome here. We can all learn together. But I think that's incredible. I love that. You just started saying, hey, I have some amazing girlfriends. I have some amazing guys that I know. I'm going to connect them. And it's turned into this.
Yes.
And you've seen so much legacy through your marriage, your faith, and your grandchildren now, which I still think that's a lie. I don't see how you even look
I just turned
remotely.
50 in January.
You look amazing.
This decade's going to be amazing. I'm excited for it.
Well, I want to encourage people. No, you said you have a challenge coming up.
I do.
People want to start doing the heart work. How can they find that, be a part of it?
I think the easiest way to find me is at Jackie Dorman. It's 1 O. It's not Dorman, it's Dorman. People get confused. JackieDorman.com. All the goodies are there. Also, Jackie Dorman Official on Instagram if they want to see the couples. I have a highlight reel that has 100 pictures of couples in each one. I think I have 8 of them up right now. And so I think it helps to increase people's faith when they see, hey, this is happening for people of all ages, all different nationalities, shapes, sizes. And I think it's really important that people understand that so they can see themselves themselves in that. So I have a challenge coming up. It's called the Modern Love Story Challenge, because dating out there is the wild, wild west and people need help. And so we're going to unpack all of that. It's a 3-day challenge and it's completely free, and they will leave that challenge activated regardless of whether they joined last year's single program or not.
Okay.
It's going to be really fun.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to see how that goes. It's happening within a week after this release. So follow that. And we hope that you are following the channel. We're so glad that you're here. Women and men, stick around, make sure you're subscribed, and leave a comment of what you enjoyed most from this episode. We'll see you next time.